Welcome to Mind, Muscle, and Metabolism, the Jade Teta podcast. Here you get the in-depth science and practical tools needed to change your body, optimize your health, and elevate your mindset. I'm Dr. Jade Teta, and here is what I want you to know. You are different. You are as unique on the inside chemically as you are on the outside physically. And those differences matter. They matter because there is only one rule to achieving optimal health, fitness, and body change. That rule: do what works for you. My goal is to help you understand exactly how. I'm so excited you're here. Your transformation starts right now. Okay, peeps, what's going on? Dr. Jade Teta here. This is the Jade Teta podcast, talking mind, muscle, and metabolism. And in this episode, I want to be covering a topic that so many people deal with. Even if you don't know you're dealing with it, we're going to talk about why that may be the case, and that is overtraining. Those of us who love to work out, especially with weights, especially with all these high-intensity metabolic conditioning workouts. I'm talking to individuals who are into CrossFit and high-end weightlifting, high-volume weightlifting, bodybuilders who are involved in that, CrossFitters who are involved in that, people who are involved in, these super intense boot camps and all of this very intense training. You especially want to listen to this because we have talked about repeatedly on this podcast how the metabolism is perceived very differently than it actually is. The metabolism is one big stress barometer. Now, I want to take a second to redefine stress for a minute because we oftentimes hear stress, we think stress is all bad, right? That's what we think. And the truth of the matter is that there is a bell-shaped curve of stress. There is a degree of stress that is absolutely required, is incredibly healthy, and perhaps the most healthy thing that we can do. We have to have change and challenge for our system to get better and be stronger. We all understand this. You can't just sit on the couch and expect to be healthy and vital and strong and fit. So no stress is a disaster for the body. And too much stress is a disaster for the body. And so how do we know when we're getting just the right amount of stress to adapt and recover? We know because we have our body talking to us all the time. And I'm going to talk about how to decipher this pretty easily, both with your own biofeedback and with using some new technologies that we now can avail ourselves of. But you have to understand first that eustress, that's what they call positive stress in science, eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S. Eustress is something that we absolutely need to make sure we are doing. We want change. We want challenge. We want just enough to push us out of our comfort zone. And this is both in life and in training in order for us to come back stronger. It's when we continue to hammer ourselves again and again and again and again, and we do not allow ourselves the ability to heal appropriately. Once, sort of stress and the stress of training starts to become over and above our ability to repair and recover and adapt, that's a problem. So think about what happens during your workouts, right? When you work out, when you finish that workout, the first thing that happens is a recovery process from the workout itself. After the recovery process is over, that lasts a few hours maybe, then you have to go into repair mode to repair some of the damage. And then you get the adaptation effects that come next. Overtraining never allows us to go through that process. So we recover from a workout, we repair from that workout, we then adapt from that workout, then we should be exposing ourselves to another stress so that whole thing repeats again. We then go through the same process, recover, repair, adapt. Now, when you start overtraining and you're doing workout after workout after workout, what happens is you never actually get to the place where you are repairing adequately or adapting at all. So you're almost in constant recovery mode. This then starts to beat on your system a little bit, and you will start seeing your system respond with increased hunger, unpredictable and unstable energy, cravings. Exercise performance in the gym will decline. Obviously, exercise recovery is going to decline. How will you know that? You'll start getting aches and pains. You'll stay sore for much longer. You won't feel motivated to get into the gym. This may go deeper into your endocrinology. Remember, the command and control center of our metabolism is our brain, so the hypothalamus and its communications to the thyroid and the adrenals and the gonads, the ovaries or testicles, may begin to be hit. And this is when you might start seeing signs and symptoms like fatigue show up, sleep disturbances, mood issues, libido being disturbed, menstrual irregularities. All of this stuff can happen, and it can happen sometimes on a subtle level. We don't know that it's happening, and we think that the best way to deal with this is just to keep training, because training has gotten us to this point where we think more is better. You know, these whole things about all or nothing, go hard or go home. And the truth of the matter is, all or nothing, if you live by that mantra, which is a silly mantra, it usually ends up in nothing for a lot of people. And if you go by the mantra, go hard or go home, oftentimes you have to go home and stay home because you stressed yourself out too much or injured yourself. So the truth of the matter is that it is smart or nothing. It is be smart in the gym. So it's not all or nothing, right? It's be smart or nothing. That's how I like to think about this. It's not go hard or go home. It's be smart or go home. In other words, we want smart training. So how can we deliver smart training? How can we tap into our ability to know how we are pushing ourselves and when we are pushing ourselves too hard or not? Well, one of the things that I like to do and teach is I like to teach this idea of biofeedback. So your body is speaking to you all the time. Now, I use two silly little acronyms to describe biofeedback, and a lot of people get this confused, so I'll talk about it here in a minute. HEC, stands for hunger, energy, and cravings. Hunger, energy, and cravings are three of the most important biofeedback tools we have because they are very responsive to stress in the body. If you are overly stressed, your energy will plummet, your motivation will fall, your cravings will go up, your hunger will grow up. Why? Because your body is wanting to recover, repair, and adapt, and it needs resources. So hunger goes up for food, cravings go up for calories, energy goes down so that you are less likely to repeat that bout again. So hunger, energy, and cravings can be looked at as a window into your ability to recover, repair, and adapt. It can be used as a window into how you are handling stress. Now, SHMEC, SHMEC, sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. All we're doing there is taking and adding sleep and mood to the equation, because we know if you are overly stressed, your sleep will become fragmented, unpredictable. You may not be able to fall asleep. Sleep doesn't feel well. You wake up not feeling rested. Mood will be impacted. You may have anxiety. You may have depression. You may have lack of motivation, lack of focus, lack of drive. Again, when the body is under too much stress, it is smart. Your metabolism is intelligent. So what it wants you to do is rest and relax. Stay in bed. It wants you to be aware that and be hyper vigilant, or it wants to take your motivation away, and it wants to elevate your hunger, and it wants to elevate your cravings because it wants to recover and recoup its energy resources because it's feeling burned out. And if you're not listening to that, you're running into big, big trouble, some of us, right? And this is where injuries come from. This is where this back and forth comes from, where it's like, I'm on my diet or I'm on my exercise regime and I do okay for a week and then I lose motivation, then I get in this binge eating behavior, then I beat myself up, then I repeat the thing again. Is because what's happening is when you try to do all or nothing or go hard or go home, what ends up happening, too many of us done this, I've certainly done this in my career, is that we will go hard for a week and then spend a month on the couch because we went too hard for a week. And so you want to get more nuanced about this. Hunger, energy, and cravings, sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings, exercise performance, and exercise recovery. Libido is a big one too, because libido is tapped into the stress response, especially for women, because as a woman, you have a little bit more stress-sensitive barometer than men because you are the gender of childbearing. And so your body says, look, I cannot manage a baby right now, therefore I'm going to not be sexually interested. And you may see changes in your menstrual cycle as well, where ovulation doesn't occur because the body says, I can't handle a baby right now when you're putting me under all this stress. This is where the female athlete triad comes in. And so you need to be paying attention to this. Libido falling in a woman is maybe an indication that she is under too much training stress. Now, again, if you're an athlete and you're performing at very high levels, there's not much you can do about this sometimes. But hopefully today's explanation and sort of discussion can help you manage this. So how do you manage this, right? How do you manage this when you have a training schedule that you want to keep, right? So I know for me, I like to lift pretty much Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, with perhaps, some extra stuff in there on Saturdays and Sundays, maybe get an extra workout in if I'm feeling it. But in general, I have 4 sessions scheduled for the week. These are going to be pretty high intensity sessions. They're scheduled for high volume. I typically do metabolic conditioning type stuff with barbells. Most people listening to this probably will do the same thing, but this applies to any type of activity that you're doing that can cause the body to have to recover, repair, and adapt. And what I do is I simply say, okay, I'm going to have and break this down into red days, days that I take off completely. Those are typically scheduled in maybe Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm going to have green days that are going to be, sort of very intense, and I'm going to let those sort of be dictated by biofeedback and HRV, which is heart rate variability, which I'll get into in a minute, which is a key that I use, and yellow days, which are days where I'm going to keep the same workout that I have scheduled, but decrease the intensity and or the volume of the workout, right? So remember, volume is sets times reps times weight. So I do a lot of high volume workouts. A lot of CrossFitters do that as well. I'm going to decrease that volume maybe by usually just decreasing the weight and going more slowly so I get less rounds and repetitions in a particular workout. So I have red days, days off, green days, days where I'm going super intense, and then yellow days. And what ends up happening is my schedule stays the same. And then I let my hunger, energy, and cravings, or my sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings, schmeck, or my exercise performance, my exercise recovery, and all the rest dictate how hard I will go. So if I'm feeling lack of motivation, lack of focus, all of those kinds of things, I'm going to go yellow. And what I've found is I started to figure this out in my mid-30s. Now I'm approaching my mid-40s. And so what I've figured out is that most of the time when I break this down, I'm spending maybe 10-15% of my time on off days and maybe 10-15% of my time in green days. And most of the other days are yellow days. And this has served me really, really well because yellow days I get to slow down. I get to go slower. I get to work on my form and movement patterns. And they actually enhance my performance in my green days. And so this is one way that I would encourage people to begin thinking about this. Now, red days aren't completely off, by the way, in the sense of off. This is where I would be doing things like passive recovery activities. So this would be sitting in the sauna, doing Epsom salt baths, going for lots of long walks, and I'll talk about walks in a minute, doing foam rolling, getting a massage, going to the chiropractor and getting worked on there. All of those kinds of rest and recovery type activities, mobility drills, movement drills, those types of activities can be very beneficial. Now, yellow days, I'm doing the workouts that I have scheduled. I am just realizing that, okay, I'm not going to be at my best today, so I'm going to work through these yellow days. And one way I know I'm yellow is, and I'm not overdoing the intensity, which can be tough, is it's not just about going lighter in the weight and doing less volume. It's about making sure I'm not breathing through my mouth excessively. Because once you start getting air hunger, this is a register to the system, a stress to the system, which can be very beneficial. It's partly how we get better, change and challenge, but it's also we don't want to overtrain. So one of the things I have learned to do is train with my mouth closed on yellow days. And this actually has some benefits because one of the things people don't realize is that we make a lot of nitric oxide when we nasal breathe. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, opens up blood vessels. It's really useful for increasing blood flow to the body. The other thing is that when we breathe out of our mouths, we are breathing out a lot of CO2, which you might think is useful, but here's the science that you need to understand. CO2 is required at the level of the cell in order for oxygen to be unloaded from the hemoglobin molecule. So CO2 is the major contributing factor that allows us to get oxygen into our cells. So we oftentimes think, let me take deeper, bigger breaths to get more oxygen into the lung, which is part of it. But in order for that oxygen to be unloaded at the level of the cell, you need to have adequate CO2 levels and be able to tolerate CO2. People who are breathing through their mouths all the time are blowing off a lot of CO2, and what happens is their CO2 tolerance sort of down-regulates a little bit. And so what you end up with is you end up with a situation that is not as useful for you because you might be taking in lots of oxygen into the lung, but you're not loading off that oxygen at the level of the blood cells or at the level of the cells because the CO2 concentration has been down-regulated. And so breathing through the nose actually helps you tolerate CO2 better and is a way to condition yourself when you get into these green-type workouts. So one of the things that I will do is attempt to only breathe through my nose during these yellow days. And once I start having to breathe through my mouth, I know I'm going to intensely. And so this is another great way to sort of put the brakes on and know you're going yellow. Again, you can also use the talk test. If I can talk to somebody pretty regularly while I'm working out, that's a good indication I'm staying yellow. So breathing through the nose, the talk test is a yellow test. Now, the green test is I have to breathe through my mouth. I am gasping for air. I am pushing hard. Breathing through my nose is almost impossible to do because I can't get enough of the oxygen in that I need. And or I couldn't talk to you and would not want to be having a conversation at all. I am 100% focused on getting through that workout. And obviously, a red day is pretty leisurely. It's pretty passive. I'm rolling around on the ground, stretching maybe. It's very gentle. Maybe someone's massaging me. Those things are what I'm doing in red days. And so these red, yellow, and green days become very useful for us when we get serious about training, right? When we get serious about training. So I encourage you to start to use this way of thinking. Biofeedback will also tell you post-workout, right? Heck and schmeck, red, yellow, green days. And we also have technology now, heart rate variability being one of the most exciting ones, that also can corroborate our experiences, our subjective experiences, and make them more objective. So what is heart rate variability? Well, we have two branches to our nervous system. The sympathetic side, which is the fight, flight, freeze side. It is the stimulating side of the nervous system. It's the part that we really amp up when we're going green in a workout. And then we have the parasympathetic side, which is the side that helps us rest, relax, recover, chill out. There needs to be a good balance between these two. When we're working out hard, we want that sympathetic system to kick in strongly. And when we're resting and relaxing, we want the parasympathetic system, the relaxing system, the rest and digest system to kick in strongly. And so what we want to be doing is we want to be measuring the balance between these two. Once we are getting stuck in a sympathetic state, sort of what I call sympathetic overload, where the body can't come down from its revved out position. It's almost like an engine, a car engine that's being revved up repeatedly while it stays in park. We all know what this feels like. If you've ever had this situation where you're sitting still or you wake up in the morning and you feel like you're buzzing on the inside, or you can't sleep at night and you feel like you're buzzing on the inside, this is a sympathetic system that is stuck in overdrive, and we want to be able to catch that earlier rather than later, and that helps us corroborate what we're seeing with our biofeedback. HRV can do this, heart rate variability. The heartbeat is not like a metronome. It's not lub-dub, 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 lub-dub in a very predictable way. It's actually more like lub-dub, 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 right? So it's not a metronome. It's broken up, and that variability from beat to beat in the heart is an indication of what's going on with sympathetic parasympathetic balance. As a matter of fact, we want a highly variable HRV. The more variable the heart, the less metronome-like it is, the healthier the heart is, and the more stress it can take. The more metronome-like it is, the less healthy the heart is. So HRV is a great tool to see where you are in your recovery. There is an app that I use. There's several of them. I think there's one called BioForce HRV. I use one that's called HRV4, number 4, Training. It's an app, HRV4 Training. And you basically just open up this app on your phone. You cover your the photo light with your finger, and it will measure the pulse coming through your hand and give you an HRV measurement. And I do this every morning, first thing when I wake up, to correlate what I'm feeling subjectively with something more objective. So HRV is very important. And I also use with a lot of clients and myself on occasion, I do an adrenal stress index test, an ASI test from a company called Diagnostics. Usually when you measure hormones, you do not want to measure hormones in saliva. There are 2 exceptions to that, cortisol and DHEA, which is really useful for us because cortisol is a major stress hormone. If cortisol levels are up very high, it probably means we are potentially stuck in sympathetic overdrive. This is not always the case, but oftentimes the case. And then DHEA is one of our major androgen precursors that tells us how we're recovering. It opposes the action of this stress hormone cortisol. So the adrenal stress index test is a test where you take 4 salivary samples throughout the day that tell you what's going on with DHEA and the adrenal and cortisol. And you can correlate a little bit of training adaptation with that as well. So now we have these sort of 3 different things. A subjective evaluation, right, where we're seeing how we feel in the gym, what's going on with our hunger, our energy, our cravings. We have an objective evaluation of HRV. And then we also can look at this adrenal stress index test from Diagnostics and do a salivary hormone profile to see how we're doing with training. So very serious athletes, those, who are serious CrossFitters and are competing, a few people that I work with fall into that category. We will use all 3 of these to see where they are and what their training status is. But for those of you who are, more consumer-based or the lay public or just, fitness enthusiast and recreationally competitive in CrossFit and some of these things, you don't necessarily have to go this deep with it, but hopefully you're understanding what you want to do here. Now, really quickly before we end this podcast, I want to talk a little bit about, how do you recover more quickly? Are there supplements that you can use and things like that? Well, one of my absolute favorite supplements is glutamine. Now, those who are, sort of key researchers and into the science and things like that, they oftentimes poo-poo glutamine. They say, there's not a lot of research there. And I actually beg to differ with them because glutamine is probably one of the best studied nutrients for stress. As a matter of fact, glutamine is one of the best things we have for people who are burn victims. People go through burn victims, which is one of the most stressful things that can ever happen to the body. That's why the mortality rate is so high. Glutamine actually increases survival in these people. So we have an awful lot of data of glutamine being used in the most stressed out of circumstances for the human body. I have also seen it clinically work wonders for people. When I say clinically, that means I'm working with individuals who are having issues, and glutamine has done some pretty amazing things. Now, we want to be very careful about case studies. I've mentioned this before, so these are my case studies. But still, when you have the research there that shows how beneficial it can be for people who are highly stressed out, burn victims and things like that, and then you have clinical stories like this one, and I'll tell you, I was working with an MD who came with me who was a marathon runner, and he was kind of skeptical about me in general because he knew I did integrative functional medicine, and my background is naturopathic medicine, as many of you know. And he was a little bit skeptical, but he heard about my work and was referred to someone who's highly respected in the world of conventional medicine. And he told me he was getting on his long runs, towards the end of the run, he was getting aching in his legs and his muscles and didn't know what it was, and his nutrition was sound and all of that kind of stuff. And I had actually seen this kind of thing before, believe it or not, although I've never run a marathon in my life. I worked with triathletes pretty steadily for a little while there. And I said pretty immediately to him, I would like for you to get on glutamine. This was not based on research. This was based on what I had seen clinically with people. And he kind of looked at me, kind of crazily, but took my word for it. And literally after the first, several days of supplementing glutamine, his aches and pains in his body went away. Now, can we absolutely say that that was glutamine or something else he was doing? We can't absolutely say. But I've said I've probably seen that a handful of times, situations like that where people are getting these weird aches and pains and or low energy in a workout. They start supplementing with glutamine, and it seems to clear up pretty well. And so glutamine is one of my favorites, but I don't think you'll find a research study proving this to be the case. So you'll have to take that with a grain of salt and do your own personal metabolic detective work to see if it can work for you. The doses I use are 15 to 20 grams daily, typically in divided doses. You can either do 5, 10, and 10, 5, 4 times, 10 in the morning, 10 at night, or you could just do all 20 at once. And luckily, glutamine comes in powder. It tastes pretty good. You can put it in water. It has a neutral taste. It's great. I also use a lot of adaptogens. Rhodiola and ashwagandha are my two favorites. Rhodiola is the one I use when people are dealing mainly with fatigue that is in the head and in the body. They're tired in the brain. They're tired in the body. Rhodiola is typically what I use, 250 milligrams to 500 milligrams per day. Ashwagandha is one of the ones I use when people are fatigued, having sleep disorders, and it's more they're sort of tired in the body but wired in the head. So we call this wired but tired. Ashwagandha is an adaptogen that I use for that and tends to do well with people who are also dealing with thyroid-related issues as well, because ashwagandha has some beneficial effects on thyroid. And ashwagandha, I typically start right around the same, about 500 milligrams per day of ashwagandha. And these can be very beneficial. Now, what about delayed onset muscle soreness, those kinds of things? What about cryotherapy, sauna therapies, massage? What's the research on that? Well, I did a review article for the Townsend Letter, which is a journal for alternative medicine practitioners. And when I did that research review, it's been now about 5 years, so this may have been changed a little bit, but from what I can tell, walking and moving is still the best thing for delayed onset muscle soreness. So these red days are actually probably better for you than anything else you can do, just getting out, walking, and moving. If you are excessively sore, you want to move a little bit. And obviously we now have, luckily so, we have so many good practitioners who do movement-based therapies and have educated us in what we should be doing with our mobility work and range of motion every single day, including on days off. And so these things, just moving, can be highly, highly beneficial for something like muscle soreness and that kind of thing. So hopefully this helps you make sense of overtraining and what you want to be considering when you are stressing out the body, to make sure that stress is a eustress so that you can recover, repair, and adapt and get stronger and better, versus beating yourself down, chasing your metabolism around, doing yourself a disservice by doing too much in the training realm. So thanks so much for being on the podcast, and I will talk to you guys soon. Okay, let me tell you about one of my favorite products for both recovery from exercise, to help me gain muscle and stay lean without a lot of extra calories, and to manage hunger, cravings, and energy levels. This is the product that I use to help me repair, recover from workouts, and manage my diet. It's called Craving Shake. It is a meal replacement shake with 35 grams of protein, enough but not too much carbohydrates. We need those to help us repair and to get our energy levels back. It also has a full spectrum digestive enzyme blend to make sure you are digesting and assimilating these nutrients, and it tastes fantastic. If you want to try the product I use every single day, pre and post workout, Craving Shake is the one that you want to check out. You can go to www.drjade.com/craving-shake. That's drjade.com/craving-shake. Thanks so much, guys. See you on the podcast.